Bruce, you talked Wednesday about maybe looking into changing the mindset offensively, maybe more shoot first and normally than pass first. I know it's only been a couple days, but initially, what does that look like? Is that more aggressiveness? Is that more selfishness? What does that look like?
Well, it's more of a, game plan kind of that everyone knows that the puck's going to the net. Now, you got to build that in. It doesn't happen overnight, especially if you have guys that like to hang on to pucks and make plays. So we have to decide, and it's personnel driven too, Danny, right? If you have, we know which guys will be back, and there may be, new play, whatever, how that shakes out. But we have to start looking at that as an avenue to create offense when things aren't going well. And then how you sell it is, hey, we didn't score the last two games in the playoffs. So when you're trying to build that in November and December, that's a bit of the messaging, right? Like when the going gets tough, this is a way to generate. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It doesn't mean you're going to score goals just because you throw it at the net, but you have like their game-winning goal, right? It got to the net and a rebound. We had some opportunities to do that. So our mindset is, hey, we're going to have people arriving at the net. The puck needs to. So that mixed with, driving pucks deep, turning up, hitting late people, or making an east-west play, because all the analytics show when you make east-west plays, the goalie has a tougher time stopping it. So that leads to goals too. So where's your balance? And I think that we have to look seriously at that. I think some teams have found a good balance. Some teams are tilted one way or the other. And listen, I think we were this year, 5th in scoring in the league. So it's not like we're 30th searching for all answers. We have to score better in the playoffs. The last 2 postseasons have told us that. So that's where that comes from, and that's where we got to strongly consider how can we do that better.
It sounds like you answered it a little bit there, but when you enter an off season and you're trying to identify weaknesses to improve on, do you care more about the bigger sample of the regular season, or do you care more about what happened in the playoffs?
Well, it's a different game in the playoffs. I think everyone tell you there's less room. People reload better. They work harder to keep the puck out of their net, so they're sacrificing their body. So there's a little bit of skill involved in changing your shooting angles and getting pucks off quicker, and that's a little bit of the individual part. But it is 2 different things sometimes. So that's, you got to get in, right? We've always said people that build their roster, there's regular season players that don't function as well, and there's playoff guys that emerge. So you got to have a balance of both, because if you don't get in, you have all these playoff guys, you don't get in the playoffs, well, then what good does it do? You're great in the regular season, you never win a round, because, that's the balance that we all go through. And I think, going to what Danny asked, when we start building that in November and December, saying, hey, this is the night we need this, it doesn't have to be every night. I'm not saying we have to change everything here and just start throwing every puck at the net. I don't think that's our team, to be honest. So asking guys to do that all of a sudden is going away from what they do well. I don't want to do that. But we need a better mix. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's how we'll do it. During the year, there'll be times, hey, tonight's a night, we'll hammer away more on that. And hopefully it gets built in more so that you become a 50-50 team or a 60-40, not an 80-20.
Bruce, do you want to see personnel changes?
I like our team. I have no problem with any player in that room. I think every one of them is a great teammate, care about one another. Is there areas of our game that, like in the group, that we could complement better? Probably. We'll evaluate that. I've never been that guy. I coach, I don't manage. We discuss our team, Krim and I, all the time. So we'll go through that process. But I'll say all the guys that are up, the contracts, were all good players for us. All good players. No disappointments at all. We'll probably have to look at areas because we're not the last team standing. Usually think, well, where can we upgrade? Where can I upgrade what I do? How can I do my job better? So we'll go through that process. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but like I said, I like our group. I think we're as strong group. Personnel we just didn't execute a high enough level. I certainly felt, I didn't walk away from Edmonton saying we had no chance. They're just better. I didn't feel that way. I felt we needed to execute better in a few of the games, and we could be the team moving on.
Bruce, you've had a couple of days to digest this. Does your opinion change now compared to after the game the other night? Or where did it kind of go wrong, do you think? Why are we here today as opposed to maybe getting ready for another round of playoffs? In the series.
Went wrong in game 2. We needed to win that game. It's tough to fall behind losing 2 home games against, when you're this far along. Every team's a good team. That's a big hill to climb. Not saying we couldn't have done it, but so that game we needed to be better. And I thought we played well. I really thought we had to find a way to win that game. You can point to, not having to get the game to overtime, finishing better, getting a better, in the second period we needed more save, whatever. We needed to be 1-1 leaving Vegas, and I think we give ourselves a much better opportunity. Game 5, the other overtime game, if we could have closed it out found a way to finish in the third. I thought we were the better team until the overtime came, and then we didn't have the same opportunities they did. Now, we had a couple of big saves in that game. We had a turnover. I think Draisaitl had a break, or a 2-on-1, and McDavid had a breakaway, or the opposite. But in general, I thought if we could have finished, hey, we didn't score in Edmonton. Give them credit. Game 4, they came out better than us. Game 5, we need to finish. Game 2, we need to keep the puck out of our net. I think it's 3-2 us, and we're in Edmonton last night. I think that's where I feel the series, we had the best opportunity to put it in our favor.
You mentioned a couple times during the playoffs about the team kind of getting dragged into the fight, and during the season it didn't. You won 50 games. How does that change going forward, especially early on in games where you initiate instead of not initiating early?
Yeah, that's an area we have to look at our starts. Even though our first period numbers I went through our analytics. We had expected goals higher than Edmonton in the first period, even though it didn't seem that way up until, I don't know if game 5, yes it was, because it was when I came home. It would have been after game 4. Expected goals doesn't mean goals, but you do have to look at some numbers. Dave, the biggest thing we'll try to change with that, I feel, is going back to the question earlier. We like to make plays. We like to get into the game by making plays, and we have to change our mindset for the first 10 minutes of, hey, we're going to play behind them no matter what and establish that part of the game, because that tends to, at least you don't usually fall behind if you're managing the puck early. You might not get ahead, but you're establishing territory, pace, style of play. So that is where we'll have to make sure, and I think when we had the Nick Waugh line, they were very good at that, so it was easy for them to do that to get us going. So we have to reestablish a line that's willing, that can do that, or two, and then drag the other guys into that type of game. And then later it opens up the ice maybe for the East-West stuff. So that's an area of focus for us next year, is how we start games and what we do with the puck. And again, for a team that likes to make plays, there's going to be resistance. So that's the challenge I'll have about managing the puck better. I've said it all along, our giveaways were too high, but they're never going to, like, we do make plays, so there's going to be some risk in our game. And then our shot mentality. Those will be the two specifics we'll hope to address in how we change the way we play next year. Because we met with the guys yesterday. Our guys are all in the D zone. They like the way we play. They like their responsibilities. They like that, they're become much more natural at it, and I agree with them. I think that's not a problem for us. Being heavy in front of your net is a mindset, so I think that Edmonton was better at the last two games than us, probably why we didn't score. So that's something that it's a mindset, but not necessarily a structural problem.
Center depth was something you talked about all season. You felt like you guys had really good center depth up the middle, and then in the playoffs, you ended up having to kind of put a couple of them together to get some of those guys going. Is that something that needs to be addressed? Like, we need to be able to keep our centers in the center?
Yeah, playoffs, they got moved. I think in the season, it was injury related, but in the playoffs, well, it was a matchup in Minnesota. It was that simple. We put another center with Jack because that's the matchup they wanted. We felt we needed that to check better, that line. And then we started the Edmonton series that way, knowing that probably wouldn't end that way, and it didn't. But now you got Nick Waugh, who moved up. That was a product of, okay, Stoney's out, who's a right winger. Sad was out, so who moves up in the lineup? Do we put Ronberg in and leave Nick Waugh down, or use Nick Waugh up? So that was the driving point behind that. Allowed us to, so it goes Schwinn or Ronberg we're thinking of, or Holtz, he maybe, right? So we ended up landing on Schwinn because I thought the playoffs, he had, bigger body, that he'd be fine in his role, and he was. So that's how Nick got moved up. It was a product of Stone's injury. Who goes in there? Holtz? Or do we move a left winger over to the right and put Ronnie in? Or move Nick up and Schwinn? So I'm not disappointed with that. It's a good problem to have. That was the thinking behind it, right or wrong, why we moved our centerman.
We've asked the players all year just how they were able to handle everything physically with the condensed season. For you, though, how was it different for you mentally, especially with the way this season went? And do you take that and apply it to next year, knowing it's probably going to be more condensed than it was this year?
Well, you think of that, but when the puck drops, I have a coaching style, and there's every year try to change the things that maybe players don't like as much, and then build on the things that do. So the mental part of it, to me, is for a coach, is always draining and during the year. Now, you do have the break sometimes in the middle of the year to get away. To me, it was an honor to go to the Four Nations and keep working. Hopefully that's the case again next year in the Olympics. But the mental part, yes, I think every year you reevaluate. Do I need to delegate better? Do I need, to step away and certain areas of the game, if that's what you're talking about? Or do you mean the whole group? Are you talking about an individual, or? Well, the whole group was a challenge because 4 guys went, and we tried to give them time at the end and communicated with them constantly after that about what they needed. So that falls a bit on the player. Like, some guys don't want to not, like Jack don't want to miss anything. So even though you feel like, hey, now he had an injury, so he did, so it's probably not a bad thing but some of that is player driven, how they respond to wanting to, take some time off. But how are we going to handle it? I don't look at our playoff exit as a product of fatigue. So I don't think that we did necessarily practice too much or not enough. I don't think that was the case. I don't know if the players mentioned that or not, but I don't know. I thought we had, our conditioning was fine. It's always been good here. As I said, there was a couple of games, the Edmonton series, we needed to be a little better. I think Minnesota was a better team than some people thought when they got their players back. They were a first-place team in the first half of the year with healthy. I'm not saying they're an elite team in the league, but they were a good hockey team. That wasn't an easy series on us physically. Like that's a team that forechecks and pounds your D. So that sometimes is just the way it goes in a playoff. So now, some guys are a little bumped and bruised going into Edmonton that's physical. Maybe some years you get a team that's a little more skill-oriented, so you got to use your legs better to check as opposed to physicality. So, but that's the matchup you get. So next year going into it, we'll have a similar template to this year, but honestly, like sometimes it's who's available, who's not. Injuries throughout the year. We talked, I think the term load management? I mean, I don't know. Like, we'll discuss that, but I don't know too many teams in the NHL that kind of have that programmed in, to be honest with you. It goes back to you got to get in. Like, it's not automatic you get in the playoffs every year. You start resting guys and throws off your rhythm, and then the end of the year you're out by 2 points, then what? Like, take your load management and take it out the door and see you later. Go take it to your next job, right? So, there's a little bit of that goes into it. Like, coaches are in the moment a lot, always, basically. It's hard to look too far ahead. You have to, but, I mean, you're usually in the moment.
Hurdle's 5-on-5 game kind of came along as the regular season went on. It wasn't all that great last postseason, and then it kind of fell off in this postseason. Like, what's missing in his 5-on-5 game in postseason?
Well, that there's not an easy answer to that. I think short sample size. I thought there was a game up in Edmonton. I thought maybe it was game 3. I had more chances than anybody. It was right in the doorstep. They didn't go in. He lost his left winger, which he has great chemistry with. I think that worked against him. We're trying to find the right line now in the middle of it against a team that's defending well. I don't want to use last year because I think Thomas came in injured and then just didn't have enough time to get up to. I'm going to give him, and rightfully so. He wasn't afforded an opportunity to develop chemistry. He was wing center. This year we wanted to get him in the middle of the ice eventually and drive his line, and I thought he did a great job of that second half of the year. I think when Sad came, it was even better. Why it didn't happen as well in the playoffs, it's a good question, but it wasn't. I don't think Jack and Barbie scored against Edmonton, so this wasn't a Thomas Hurdle thing. This was a team that we just weren't able to break through and score. So there's an analysis for the coaching staff, like, what did we do wrong in terms of our structure and game plan against Edmonton, why we couldn't score? That's what we'll start. And then if we see individuals like, well, they all had their chances, they didn't finish, well, then there's a credit sometimes to the goaltender, and sometimes it's, well, I think we were off net. I think that there's some statistics that back that up. So that is part of the problem. You can't score if you don't hit the net. That's on the individual, and that little bit of a stretch of where we didn't hit the net that we could have helped ourselves. But then you go, well, we shut them out for 70 minutes, right? Like, it was a tough. They didn't score either. McDavid had one goal. Like, it was a tough series to score. Their depth ended up scoring more than ours. That's a fact. But it was a tough series to score for the most part. So I don't want to pin it on one individual not going. As I said, I thought the effort was there for us. We have to examine that, why we didn't. But I don't sit here and say, well, our guys didn't want it. They just weren't able to do it.
You've talked about Jack's progression all year, and he went into the season probably with a lot to prove after the Dallas series and turned it into the best year of his career. What does that next level or that next gear look like for him? Is it maybe more selfishness in getting pucks on net, or what? For
the regular season, or because the next gear looks like it did 2 years ago in the playoffs. That is a top gear. That is an elite number one center having an elite playoff. So that you can go right to there. He hit his stride. Regular season is health too driven. If you're going to be a 100-point guy, you typically have to not miss much time. Who's around him? Are they natural? Like, Barbie, did Barbie have a career high this year with goals? You got to give Jack some credit for that, right? So he's making people around him better. Are they going to drive him, make him better? There's a little bit of that analysis when you look at an individual's career points or season points. So I think Jack has another gear in terms of now wanting to be in the elite with regular season scoring with the top guys. Jack also understands that it's a team game, and I think McDavid this year was one of his lowest point totals too, and understands after going to Game 7 last year, there's other things that have to go into your game. that you measure yourself. It's not always that. I don't want to speak for him, but players go through those kind of seasons where they understand that. And I think Jack's going a bit the other way now. He's going to drive himself to be that higher end producer, and some of it is power play driven. Our power play was better this year, and that's where you pick up a lot of points. So again, if you're talking about him, like, we didn't get that many power. Imagine if we got the more power play opportunities, he'd be over 100 points because of the production of the power play that goes through him. So I think Jack, if you looked at his game to grow it a bit, would start shooting a little bit more, and his goals, because he's always had the ability to score. He likes to defer, set players up. That's where could be some growth in his game offensively. After that, this guy's a world-class leader, and he's pulling guys into the fight every night. He's trying to make a difference every night he's on the ice. So I have not one issue with Jack Eichel's game and his willingness to win. It's infectious, and we just got to make sure we put the people around him that he can pull it out of.
In the regular season, Aiden checked a bunch of boxes, hitting milestones as far as starts go. Seemed like he got better as each series went on, but statistically in the playoffs, not as good as you'd like. Just where's your confidence level in him going forward as the guy?
Oh, I got lots of confidence in Aiden. He's proven he can play under pressure. He now proved this year that he could handle a workload of what we want for our number one. Okay, like we've talked about this. There's the odd Shesterkin, the 60 guy, but most of them are in the 50s. Stayed healthy. A lot of goalies' numbers are down in the playoffs because of the amount of shots that actually get to the net. There's not a lot of them are getting blocks. So you're usually looking at good looks that are getting to the net. So I think analyzing save percentage this playoff is probably unfair to the goaltenders. Did Aiden need to be better in the series? Yes, just like a lot of guys. We didn't have. I think we addressed that, the lack of secondary or scoring, and they shut us out the last two games. What if the script was flipped? We wouldn't be doing this right now, right? If we shut them out, we did so. There's a little bit. Is that on Aiden? No, but I'm saying that's what happened to us. So it can go the other way. So I think when Aiden leaves here, he should own his game and say, hey, next year I'm going to be this much better. We didn't lose because Aiden Hill, I'm not putting that, I'm just saying in general, that was a piece of the game that needed to be better at times. When you get in these close series, you can examine a lot of different things. And that was a piece. The scoring from some of our top guys was a piece. Power play timing, a couple of games needed to be better. That's the way I look at it. And but going into the series, if you had said to me, okay, Draisaitl has 5 points, or what do you have, 6? McDavid had 5. They had 1 goal and 2 goals. And their power play was 9%. And the series is over in 5. I'm thinking, well, we're winning. That was a bit of the game plan. I'm not going to lie to you. Limit McDavid and don't let them take the series over. Don't let their power play get hot to the point their top guys now start feeling it. And we did do that. So credit to the guys for checking well, but it didn't go our way. So that's where we're looking at it like, okay, where did we miss on that? Well, it was the depth, a little bit of scoring, and they end up shutting us out, which, when you think of Edmonton, you think they're going to beat you 6-4, not 1-0. So that's a little bit of the disappointing part of the series. I think we did do some things well against top people, and it didn't go our way. So you have to relook at the game plan when you play them. But I still believe that. I went through how they played against Florida last year. When Florida, the games they won, there was some low-scoring games that kept them off the sheet because people are always, well, you're going to have to outscore them to win. I'm like, I don't know. Are you going to go and beat Edmonton 5-4, 6-5 every night, or could you have to check well and beat them 3-2? So it's open to discussion, right? We didn't get it done, so we'll have to look at that. Thank you. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. So there's only one scenario where these year-end media availabilities are as happy as you'd like to be, as that's if you've won 4 rounds, and we didn't do that. I guess just to share my thoughts on the season, the playoffs. I think it was a really good regular season, 50 wins. We talked about that before. Won the division. We had a good series with Minnesota against a real good team, and were able to come out on top there. We fell short against Edmonton, so it's disappointing to have our season end. I think that our team genuinely believed we had what it takes to win. I think when you build a team, you want to build a team that has a chance to win a Stanley Cup. I think this team did. I think there's probably a handful of teams in the NHL that can say that, and one of them will do that. So from that standpoint, it's disappointing because we fell short of what we anticipated that we would. In terms of next steps when the season ends, yesterday was the day that was spent entirely in exit meetings with the players. I think those meetings are really important for the player. I think they're really important for the coach and the manager. So that was a long day, a necessary day, an important day. And then we've got the amateur draft, which comes up at end of June, and then of course free agency. So this next 6-7 weeks is a really important time in the calendar of an NHL team. Just with respect to health updates, we did have some injuries through playoffs. Some of them were play issues, some of them were not. I've said to you many times, in fact, I said it a lot more so the year we did win, a lot of things have to go right for your team to win. You have to be playing well at the right time. You have to have good health or be able to work your way through that. The year that we won, those things happened. I think this year in the playoffs, we were banged up a bit, which changed line combinations, probably changed chemistry a little bit, where you'd like to have everybody in that groove. I look at Saad, Hurdle, Dorofeyev, I thought was a great line for us in the second half of the season after Brandon arrived from St. Louis. I thought they played really good hockey together. Pav was our top goal scorer and ended up missing some time, so that changes that line. Brandon Saad had an injury, so that changes that line even more so. I thought Victor Olofsson, Carly, and Riley Smith were likely our best line down the stretch. I thought they played extremely well, so now you have to change things up to make up for the players that are out of your lineup. So some of those things come into play, and everybody deals with it. These aren't excuses. These are just the realities of that fine line or that thin margin that sometimes separates winning from losing. We didn't score in the last 2 games. That's one of the questions that you guys are going to be waiting to ask. I didn't see it as a failure to generate scoring chances. I thought we had some opportunities in each game. I look at game 1, we're up 2-0, and had 2 great chances where we missed the net, and things like that happen. Game 5 is somebody's going to get that opportunity to score the 1 goal it was going to take to win. That was Edmonton. We lost 2 overtime games in the series. I don't know the historical data, but that's a really tough way to win a series when you lose twice in overtime. The flip side is in round 1 we won twice in overtime, which I think just puts you in that much better of a position. So again, these aren't excuses. We're not about that. It's just sort of sharing my thoughts on some of the things that come into play at this time of year. The games are competitive. The games are different. We all watch an 82-game regular season, not just our own team, but teams around the league, and it's just different when you get to the playoffs. That's something that we keep in mind when we build our team. You look at how hard it is to score, not just for our team, but just across the league at this time of year, with the commitment that teams make defensively, with the willingness to block shots, with the reduction in special teams generally that takes place in the Stanley Cup playoffs. All of those things play a hand in it. So I don't know that I would overreact to the fact that we didn't score enough goals. That's obviously an important part of the game, but we were a good offensive team all year. We were 5th in the NHL in goals scored, so I don't think that it was a chronic issue that you would have expected would be our demise or lead to our demise in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Player front, William Karlsson will join Team Sweden at the World Championships and represent his country there. It's in Sweden, so it's nice for William with his family. And Jonas Ronberg has gone across to play for Denmark, his home country. So 2 players that we have participating in the World Championships. So with that, I would open it up to your questions.
Kelly, you kind of just touched on it about obviously not being an issue with scoring. Bruce had mentioned that maybe when you get to the playoffs, it might be a little bit personnel driven. Looking at how the last 2 postseasons have ended, do you maybe see a little bit change in personnel to kind of make up for that in the playoffs, or do you believe in the personnel that you have that can build its way through it throughout the year?
Yeah, I do, Danny. I think that we have a good team. We have a good team, and when you don't win, it's because you didn't score enough. But we also work real hard to defend, and even in our series, we lost a game where we scored 4 goals. So I don't think that I think when you look at it, the last game, when you lose the last game that way, and the game previous, well, game 4 in Edmonton, we didn't play well, and I didn't think that it was. There were bigger concerns for me in game 4 that led to the fact we didn't score, right? I didn't think that was a good game for us in the series. Game 5, I thought we played really well. So I think that when you look at it, on a specific night, if you didn't win, you didn't score enough, right? But I feel that the team was good enough to win.
Along those lines, when you're making decisions about weaknesses or strengths on the team, how much do you weigh a smaller sample size of the playoffs, which is obviously the more important games, over the bigger size of the regular season? Because obviously they don't always match up.
Well, I think the playoffs are extremely important in evaluating your players and evaluating your team. But the point that I tried to make in my opening comments, there's a lot more to it than just taking the stat sheet at the end of the night and looking at it. There's a lot more to it as to who you can trust in playoffs, who understands what it takes in playoffs, who can handle it physically, who can get to interior ice, who will do what needs to be done at playoff time to win. So that's that evaluation, and we do a really thorough job across the NHL at playoff time of using that to complete our evaluations on players off other teams, right, that are playing. So it's really valuable, and yet you've got to get to the playoffs before you get through the playoffs. So I think you can't overlook players' performance over 82 games. It just changes again at playoff time, and that's what we love about it. That's what players play for, is the opportunity to play playoff hockey.
Kelly, 2 questions. Looking ahead to free agency, Nick Hague is a pending RFA. There's been a lot of talk around the league of offer sheets coming back into play. Are you anticipating that potential with Nick? And my second question is, as you look to build your roster for next season, as you look internally, where does Trevor Connolly fit in, given that he's got kind of a small sample size between Providence, his time with Team USA, and of course with the Silver Knights? Do you see him getting a full shot to make the Golden Knights roster out of training camp?
I'll speak to Nick Hague and your comment or your question on offer sheets. I think with the outcome of last summer's offer sheet between St. Louis and Edmonton, with as well as the 2 players played in St. Louis, it's certainly going to be a talking point around the NHL, I think not only by media, but also by front offices. We've got time with Nick Hague. I think our players want to play here, so I don't anticipate that being an issue, but I don't know that. Those are things that we'll be looking at in the next while also. And will there be more of them? There could be. There's things that come into play. The cap is going up, so that team that does get offer sheeted, like the one thing that gets overlooked is, St. Louis successfully acquired Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway only because Edmonton chose not to match. So with the cap going up, it does, I think, and I'm not talking about Vegas and Nick Hague specifically, I'm talking in general terms. With the cap going up, if that team wishes not to lose that player, he's probably got a little more flexible. A team probably has a little more flexibility to prevent that with some cap growth, right? And I think where offer sheets sometimes are successful is when there's a team that's, the circumstances have to be there for an offer sheet to work. And historically they rarely do, but because the last two did, it's definitely gained a lot of momentum in terms of the conversation. Oh, sorry, and with respect to Trevor, Trevor played really well in Henderson. We got, I think, 6 games that he played, and it was a great experience. He played, at home, on the road, back-to-back, traveling home from Bakersfield, things that you don't do in college hockey. So I thought it was a good experience for him. He played really well. My expectation is that he would be in Henderson next year. I think that's developmentally where he fits, but we're never going to tell a player that he can't come to training camp and make our team. He's got a special skill set. He does a lot of things that other players don't naturally do. He's really worked hard physically. He's been in town here continuing to train. He's still in town training with our strength people. So I think that's going to be a really important part of the development piece for him is where he gets to physically this summer. And we know what he looked like on draft day, and that's that's part of what goes into drafting is the projection as to what a guy's going to look like size-wise, strength-wise, and how he'll continue to develop. But in terms of the talent, certainly it's there.
Kelly, I want to go back to, you mentioned Game 4, and you had maybe some concerns, you said, going into it. You come off this emotional win in Game 3. What do you make of how that unfolded? Where the team didn't really seem to have too much jump in their game.
No.
What do you make? Yeah.
Well, that's a great question, and it happens in the playoffs that you have that game that sort of leaves you shaking your head. And if you remember 2 years ago, and it wasn't a 4-0 loss. 2 years ago, we lost Game 4 in Edmonton, and of the 2 games we ended up losing to Edmonton, Game 4 in 2023, I thought they really outplayed us that night when they won Game 4. If you remember Game 3, we won. Aiden came in for Laurent, and we won Game 3, and then Game 4, I thought they really outplayed us. The difference is we came home 2-2. The difference this time is we come home 3-1. And when I look at pivotal moments in the series, the Game 2 loss where we were down 3-1, we were down 4-2, we fight back, we tie the game. I think we're the better team going into overtime. I think we're finishing the third period. I think we come into overtime playing really well. We get a major penalty, which it's almost unthinkable that you're going to kill an Edmonton Oiler major penalty in overtime. We do that, and then we have the missed call on Braden McNabb. So on a night where we had 2 power play goals, for me, we've killed a major, we're going on the power play with a call on McNabb, and that outcome maybe is different, right? That really, looking back at the series, that haunted us, right? Because then that Game 4 where you didn't play well, just what I said, you're not coming home 2-2. You're coming home down down 3-1, and it's not impossible at 3-1. You have to go on 3-1 game winning streaks, right? And I thought our effort in game 5, I thought our preparation, I thought the coaches had the team very well prepared how we needed to play, and I thought we played really well in game 5. That's how I felt.
Carlson said after the game the other night, it feels like a wasted year because you guys didn't make a deep run. Is that just a byproduct, do you think, of how incredibly high you've set the bar here for?
Yeah, I think that's it's somewhat of a raw emotion answer. Clearly it's not a wasted year in any sense of the word, but it's a disappointment that we didn't get to where we wanted to get to. So I think when a player says that, or when I say that, for me it feels like a missed opportunity. That's more my take on it than I would never call it a wasted year. I don't feel it was anywhere near that, but to me it was a missed opportunity because, as I said my opening comments and a couple of times since, I felt our team was good enough to win.
Kelly, we saw the emergence of Pavel Dorofeyev become a legitimate goal scorer in the league. For a young guy like him who set the bar so high this year, 35 goals, how difficult is it going to be for him to not only maintain that, but exceed that? And what does he need to do in the offseason in order to be able to become a consistent 35, 40 goal scorer in the league?
Well, he's on a great trajectory. He's not going to surprise anybody next year. So people know who Pavel Dorofeyev is. So that's going to make it more challenging for him. The thing with Pav that I like a lot, I think he's still got a lot of room in his development curve to continue to improve. Physically, he's still a boy as opposed to what man strength is in the NHL. He's made tremendous progress that way. He's strong on his stick now. He takes pucks to inside ice. He's got an elite shot, and will he get 35 goals? Maybe he gets 30 goals. I'm not. I can't say what that'll look like. Maybe he gets 40. But he, it's going to be harder based on the fact that he's going to be a guy that teams are careful who they put out on defense against him. They're going to check him tight, and that's just part of the challenge now for him. Really disappointing for him to miss time in the playoffs, because I think in terms of the overall growth of a player or a young player really benefits from time in those kind of games, and Pav missed Game 6 in Minnesota, Game 1 and Game 2 of the series against Edmonton. And then you're jumping back in, right, which is a little bit tougher to do, especially for a guy that's less experienced. So too bad that he didn't get the opportunity to have a full run at playoff time. But, year over year, just tremendous growth in his game.
We've talked all year about the importance of getting the guys signed that you did throughout the year, so you can clean up a lot of your business going into July 1. Still have a lot of flexibility, I think, going into July 1. Do you envision using most of that to evaluate the guys that are already here, or do you envision maybe an upgrade somewhere in the lineup? Well,
it's really, I think, good for our organization and good for the players involved. The guys that we signed, I made a note of them before. It was, Theodore, McNabb, Howden, Colasar, and Hill, who I think are really important players on our team, and guys that we want to keep in the organization. We've got Tanner Pearson, Victor Olofsson, Riley Smith, Brandon Saad, Ilya Samsonov is expiring contracts on June 30th. So we'll work on those players first, make some decisions there, or have discussions with players and with agents of those guys to determine what the fit is to keep some of those players involved. I think there's a really good case to be made for a lot of those players. I think they played well here for us. So we'll make those decisions, and then depending how that goes, that's going to dictate to some extent what you do on the 1st of July with free agency. But we're going to do everything we can to make our team better in this next 6-7 weeks.
Can you share any specifics on any of the injuries that occurred? Were there any players that were injured that we didn't know about, and is anyone potentially not going to be healthy by next season?
We have no surgeries, which we've had some in the past, right? So that is encouraging. I would say the injuries we had, probably Saad would have been a guy that would have missed the most time. Stone, we felt could have got back in the series potentially. McNabb for me was probably the guy I'm likely most injured of anybody, and I don't think I have to explain to you where he got hurt, what the injury was, but that's the type of warrior he is and the player he is. Yeah, we had a couple of guys that played hurt that are going to continue to get treatment here after the season, but not unexpected. I don't think at this time of year with the guys. With what happened at playoffs, and again, no one will have any off-season surgery. Zero issue in terms of availability for fall.
You confident getting a deal with Dumba-Jack?
Sorry?
Are you confident getting a deal done with Jack?
Well, certainly that'll be an important order of business for us, and the guy is a tremendous player. He's one of the top guys in the NHL, and he's got great character, great leadership. You see night in, night out what he does for our team. So that'll be a really important piece of business for us, and we sure hope to keep Jack in our organization. Jack loves it here, so I would hope that we can find common ground and keep him a Golden Knight.
Kelly, when you talk about expiring contracts and looking at the makeup of next year's roster, where does Henderson, any players pushing that you saw from this year, like a Kai Uchez or a Braden Bowman, that might fit the mold?
Some of the young players in Henderson I thought had really good second halves in particular. I think that's why that team got better in the second half. The young players kind of elevated the team, I thought. So, off seasons are big for the young player, right? What do they look like in camp? That for me is always one of the exciting things about training camp, is what type of a step did a young player take, right? And that's, we talked about Dorofeev a little bit earlier. You could kind of see that from one year to the next year that he was making progress. The two guys you mentioned certainly have played well, but there's a handful of guys down there that now are, becoming third-year pros, and that's what our training camp and our preseason are going to be about, is seeing where those guys are at. Are some of them ready to stay and fight for NHL spots, or do they need more time?
Anything else for Kelly today? Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone.